All right, hello YouTube. I have decided I was going to start talking about life experiences and that sort of thing. Obviously, my last video about midlife crisis is an indicator of the direction I'm kind of taking things. Um, I'm trying to maybe insert my more Germanic heathen perspective into things, but there's a lot of factors into what make us who we are and our perception of things. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to talk today about military grooming standards. Okay, I watched the news here yesterday, and it was about the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and kind of how he's reinstituting a lot of military standards, okay? Grooming standards, physical fitness standards, all these things like this, right? And I'm in agreement with most of them. And I think he's going to be a great Secretary of Defense, by the way, a real war fighter in charge, not this Pentagon politician like we're used to seeing, right? A real guy. So, that being said, and I'm not just talking on my ass here, okay? So, I'm a guy who did my 20s in pretty much two branches of the U.S. military. I was U.S. Navy and I was U.S. Army. I'm wearing a golden shellback shirt because I am a golden shellback. Those of you who are Navy, you might know what that's all about. A nice little fun hazing ritual in the crossing the equator. Good times, right? So anyway, I have kind of mixed feelings about it. All right, I think on one hand we know that some of these old grooming standards had a pragmatic purpose, and they go far back beyond the U.S. military's existence. Okay, so for example, one news pundit was talking about, well, this has to do with World War One. You keep your hair cut short, stops the spread of lice. Okay, yes, that's not necessarily originally an American military thing. You look to the Romans cutting their hair short. They knew they kept their hair short. Their equipment fit better. Their helmets fit better. Of course, you can reduce the spread of things like lice, which is problematic in men living close together like that for long periods of time. Also, long hair can make a handhold for people wanting to fight you. Now, as I say this, my hair is growing out. I'll be growing my hair past my shoulders. I will not be cutting it. I'm going to grow it long. I'll keep it trim, but I'm not going to cut it short again. I wore that high and tight haircut for far too long. I wore short haircuts for far too long. I'm comfortable with my hair being long. I prefer it. So, getting back into it, obviously, you look at the samurai, good example. Feudal Japan, they had that ridiculously bald looking head. It looks terrible. But, of course, it stops the spread of lice. So, being clean shaven, that helps keep a tight seal on, like an OBA breathing apparatus in the U.S. Navy. You're trying to get out, you got to keep a tight seal. You get oxygen, you could be in the middle of a fire. Wearing a gas mask in the Army, you're wearing a gas mask, or Marine Corps, whatever, or whoever's wearing a gas mask, you want to be able to keep a tight seal. It can interfere with the seal on your mask. So there's a pragmatic reason for this. My issue is, and it's mostly when I look at comments, especially, there's sort of a weird mindset in the military. Now, those of you who've done military service, who did not get indoctrinated, by the way, let's clarify that. You realize how arbitrary the standards can be. Sometimes being very uniform, hyperconformity does not indicate effectiveness at the job, whatever the job is. Okay? But there are plenty of people in the military who believe that to be the case. So, for example, they will judge you on how you look in a uniform, how you wear that uniform. And when I'm talking about, and those of you who've been in know what I'm talking about, when you stand every day and you're inspected, you're inspected every single day. And it's just this ridiculous standard. How shiny you wear your shoes. In the Navy, their gig line isn't lined up, right? Little things like this. It could be microscopic details. it gets a little ridiculous. It gets to where I feel like the military can be more about aesthetics than effectiveness. Uh, my having long hair does not affect my ability to shoot. Does not affect my ability to fight. Now, well, it can fly around and get in my face when you're shooting and moving, and or if you're boxing, it can do all that. However, it is not an indication of discipline or personal discipline. Nothing could be further from the truth. I know plenty of people in the U.S. military that dressed as pretty as they could be, and they looked sharp, and they aced every inspection. They knew all the little rules and regulations and what to say, and they were some of the dumbest sons of bitches ever. And they could not work. They could not fight their way out of a paper sack. They could not shoot effectively, but they look good. And I think that's because our military has been politicized. It has been heavily politicized for a long time. So, and it's a weird. It almost becomes like a cult. Unless you've been in the military, you really can't appreciate how cult-like military service can be. Now, some of these things are necessary. You're trying to get large groups of individuals to work as a cohesive unit and see themselves as separate from everybody else. There's a lot of conforming you have to do to be in the military. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. I had a friend in Afghanistan, and he was intercepting traffic from different insurgent groups. And he said it was funny because a lot of the special forces guys, a lot of Green Berets, like to grow their beards out. They grow their hair out. They blended in more with the locals because they felt like the locals respected them when they grew a beard, like, say, some of the Taliban, for example. So they fit in. They were respected. Now remember, they're trying to garner support. They're trying to help train potential insurgencies or counterinsurgencies and what have you. That whole. Some of you guys might have been in that world and know way more than I do about it, and can understand where I'm coming from here. So to say that, say, Green Berets with beards are less capable than that grunt kid out of boot camp who is perfectly clean shaven, it's rather absurd, right? Now, granted, a different mission, different parameters, different mission essential task list, right? They got all these different things they have to do. But anyway, my friend was saying, he said, he hears this chatter. He said, they said, we're not worried about fighting the boys, like the little boys. And he said it was the soldiers who had clean shaven faces. So we're worried about the tigers. You talk about the men with the beards, okay? These Green Berets. So you could see that it's all kind of about perception. Now, having a beard does not make you a better fighter. Not having a beard does not make you a better fighter. It has nothing to do with discipline. But I see these guys who they retire in the military, and they're kind of weird. They've been institutionalized since they were right out of high school, And some of you guys know what I'm talking about, the guys who've been in for 15 years, and you see them always in uniform, and they're the senior enlisted guys, and they're getting older, and then you see them in civilian clothes, and they wear what they were wearing in high school in, say, 1985 or whatever, They look fucking stupid as shit. Yeah, that kind of. These are people who never really matured outside of that. They're in this little insulated world, and you can see in the comments section. Back in my day, you didn't have a clean shaven. You just were a shitty soldier. It's like, oh, come on, that's bullshit, dude. And there's a lot of assholes in the military, which I will highlight someday in the future. The military is full of tyrants and sycophants, and there's a weird shit about people who like the military, who really, really like it. There's advantages to it, disadvantages to it, but yeah, it has nothing to do with effectiveness. How looking pretty or not has nothing to do with effectiveness. In my experience, the best shooters have always been passionate civilians. Now, many of them have military experience and understand that world and how it works. Best shooters, best fighters. Me, I can fight at a very high level. I've been a dedicated martial artist. I was doing this whole mixed martial arts thing before it was even popular on TV. I have become very good. I've trained with elite MMA fighters, including some UFC fighters, Olympic boxers, judoka. I've trained with some good people. I'm not as good as they are, not in their individual sports, by the way, but I can remember, and I'm bringing this up because I can remember in the Army training, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with some guys. And a lot of guys realized I was pretty good at it, so they started training with me and working with me. And you know, and I can remember some dipshit with the really stereotypically deep Southern accent. You guys ain't got no discipline, rolled around on the ground like that. You got no discipline. And I'm like, do you have any idea how much discipline it takes to get good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Do you have any idea the grind? And by the way, I can smash that guy in 10 seconds. He's done. He's not going to fight. I don't even have to clinch or throw him. I can just knock the shit out of him. But you got these guys who don't know what real discipline is, and I kind of started my own phrase when I was in the military, and because always people throwing that word discipline. Discipline seemed to be kind of about, are your shoes shiny? Are your shoes shiny? Did you go at parade rest the right way in front of that officer? That commissioned officer. Did you salute at the right time? Did you walk with that military bearing like you got a carrot up your ass? So their idea of a discipline was something entirely stupid to me. It had no sense. Being disciplined, doing things that nobody else wants to do, it to me is a form of discipline. I said that the only real discipline is self-discipline, and I stand by that. The only true discipline is self-discipline. That means you find something that's challenging to do, you make yourself do it over and over again, you master it, or you come to a high level of skill with it. You don't relent. You are strong. You are truly disciplined. The military life has its ups and downs, but these notions that somehow making people shave is going to make them better soldiers is ridiculous. There's a practical medical reason for the start of these things. I mean, I'm surrounded here. If you look here, I'm in between teaching some of my ESL classes, but I got images here of one of the most disciplined military units that ever existed. We're talking about the British military and their saber drills here. In their prime, after the American Revolution, they were just awesome. A very disciplined, very powerful fighting force. And of course, they had uniforms and regulation. There's a reason for uniformity. It does have its place, but I'm willing to bet you a little bit of long hair to a British soldier wasn't an issue. Of course, they had uniforms, and of course, they had to keep things strong. But it's up to the individual. It's up to the person. You want to be disciplined. You want to be powerful. It doesn't matter what it is. If you follow somebody else's rules, realizing that rules like that are built for a collective. I talked to some very skilled civilian shooters who do long-range pistol shooting, and we had a long conversation, and asked me about my opinions of military shooting, and I said, well, they'll take somebody who knows nothing about shooting and make them a very competent shooter, and can train them. You can get good training. You spend a lot of time in the military training. You got time. It's like your full-time occupation. I said, but I always felt like those standards, and it goes with physical fitness training as well. You'll take if this is the C, this is the average. I'm going A, C, A, B, C, D, the grade scale like at school. You'll take the A students, A plus students who have found their own way to perfect their skills, and you'll take the F students, the ones who suck, and you'll bring them all to about a C. The highly skilled ones might be a little bit above, the other ones might be a little below, but for the most part, you'll bring them into a mean average. So the skilled guys are never going to grow or become even better, not through the military. They'll be brought down into some lesser standard, okay? This general purpose standard. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents for the morning, and I hope it resonates with some of you. I'm sure some of you in the military it might. I just can't wait for this fucking hair to get long enough that it doesn't poke my eyes when I'm boxing. So, anyway, see you guys next time, and I'll have something else to bitch about. Goodbye.